Tonight, a crucial voting bloc candidates hope to win over.
Evangelicals are people with a lot of different views.
The changing tides of evangelical politics this election year. And a Florida Supreme Court decision on banning abortion sets up a November ballot measure battle in the state.
I'm going to continue fighting, abortion until it's finally banned here from Florida.
Plus,
we will get to the bottom of this and we will share our findings.
Horror in Gaza as an aid group working with the IDF ends up facing its deadly fire. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. With presidential nominations nearly locked up, all eyes turn to the battleground states. Good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. Voters in 5 states are heading to the primary polls today, including in the decisive swing state of Wisconsin. In 2016, Donald Trump bested Hillary Clinton there. In 2020, Joe Biden won. The University of Virginia's Center for Politics rates Wisconsin as one of 4 true toss-ups, along with Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. Well, President Biden and former President Trump have both secured enough delegates to take home their party's nominations. This primary vote isn't without some pushback for the commander-in-chief. Some Democrats plan to push back against Biden's handling of Israel's war with Hamas by opting for an uninstructed delegation on the ballot. Meanwhile, today, Trump was back on the campaign trail, preaching a message of failed border policy under this administration.
This is country changing, it's country threatening, and it's country wrecking. They have wrecked our country. It's a border bloodbath, and it's destroying our country. It's a very bad thing happening. It's going to end on the day that I take office.
And new polling from the Associated Press finds more than 2/3 of Americans disapprove of how the Biden administration is handling the issue of immigration. Well, in the past, evangelical voters have tended to favor conservative Republican candidates. In the last 2 presidential elections, Trump garnered the support of around 80% of white evangelicals. But as the nation looks to November, some are sensing a shift, leading to question, what is an evangelical? David Brody reports.
Defining the evangelical voter has always been a challenge, and nowadays it's become even more complicated. Former GOP nominee for president Mike Huckabee says evangelicals don't just fit into one box anymore.
I get so tired of hearing particularly this line. Well, evangelicals are all, and then fill in the blank. Evangelicals are not all anything. Evangelicals are people with a lot of different views.
Huckabee knows the playing field because when he first ran for president in 2008, his more populist tone resonated with evangelicals.
Bless our president, Donald Trump.
Long before Donald Trump came along.
I was talking about working class issues. And at that time, it was a little bit too soon for the Republican Party to hear it.
Fast forward to 2024, and headlines such as Trump has transformed evangelicals and is connecting with a different type of evangelical highlight the change. Those result from the former president's appeal to those who might not attend church regularly and are seen as anti-establishment and anti-elitist. Chad Connolly leads the Get Out the Vote organization, Faith Wins.
I think it's fair that he's brought out a whole different segment of voters that have been really missing.
And that includes evangelicals.
Absolutely includes evangelicals.
A growing distrust of the federal government has helped drive this change. In 2017, 31% of white evangelical Protestants expressed trust in the government. Today, the number has dropped more than half to 15%. Perhaps a more telling shift is the standard on personal morality of a candidate. More than a decade ago, 30% of white evangelicals believed an elected official could commit personal immoral acts and still be ethical in their public life. That number has now skyrocketed to 72%. Then there's the contrast in education. Exit polls in this year's GOP primaries show that while Trump split the college-educated evangelical vote, he wins more than 2/3 of those who didn't go to college.
We heard during the Obama years that the left wouldn't go visit in the areas in Pennsylvania that were coal mining areas, that were just blue collar, go to work, flag waving, God fearing, but might have a beer on a Friday afternoon kind of thing and go to church once a month. I do think that Trump has brought those people out.
Many of those voters are likely former Democrats or independents who have added a new layer to the evangelical column. They're also seen as leaning toward Trump on issues like illegal immigration, economic uncertainty, and that lack of trust in the federal government.
There's something going on in the country.
What he says makes sense, and it makes sense to the hardworking people of America.
Connolly's group is planning a Common Sense America tour, which stops at churches nationwide. Instead of the usual church conference focusing on areas such as life and marriage, this tour will be broader, touching on issues deeply affecting the church.
David, I've been in 11 states this year. Not a single one hasn't been affected by the drug trafficking, the fentanyl. I've had churches who had deacons or members or tithers or people who really involved in their church, Sunday school teachers who've lost kids to this fentanyl poisoning stuff, or even people in their family and community, and the churches are the backstop. So I just think this populist movement is because people are fed up with what's going on, and you don't have to be a Christian to see it.
David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, David. Well, abortion looks to be another big issue this November, and it just got a lot more interesting in Florida. The Florida Supreme Court has cleared the way for a 6-week abortion ban while also putting the issue on the November ballot for the state. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener has more on how it could affect the election. Tara, how big of an industry is abortion in Florida?
Well, Jenna, about 80,000 women have abortions there every year. The court's decision paves the way for the state to have some of the country's strongest abortion restrictions. At the same time, justices will allow voters to decide the overall question on abortion rights. Reaction came quickly across the political spectrum to these major rulings.
I'm going to continue fighting, abortion until it's finally banned here from Florida.
By upholding the state's 15-week abortion ban, justices paved the way for a 6-week ban passed last year by the legislature and approved by Governor Ron DeSantis.
It was the right thing to do. Don't let anyone tell you it wasn't.
While abortion rights advocates acknowledge this is a setback,
if the voters also want to show their displeasure to those justices for their vote, they could also weigh in November.
They're embracing the decision to let voters decide in November whether to protect abortion rights in a ballot initiative.
Florida is now ground zero in the fight to protect the woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. And as House Democrats, we are here to make clear that we stand with you to protect reproductive freedom.
60% of Florida voters voting to approve the measure would protect it in the state's constitution.
All that hard work to get it on the ballot, we will see it, and also, happiness that we're letting Floridians decide.
The move is also raising interest in this year's election, when every seat in the Florida House of Representatives is on the ballot.
We're now going to have a ballot initiative where people are going to be able to fight back against the sort of extremism that continues to play out because of what he did in appointing the justices who overturned Roe v. Wade.
Now, Florida's 6-week abortion ban does allow exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Other red states that have put abortion on the ballot, including Kansas, Kentucky, and Ohio, have all voted to support abortion rights. Jenna.
All right, Tara, thank you very much. Tony Perkins is the president of the Family Research Council and host of Washington Watch, and he joins us now. Tony, welcome. So it looks like all eyes on Florida now after the Supreme Court ruling. Tony, does this give new life to Democrats and some of their races there? And will it drive turnout, helping President Biden and other down-ballot races?
We look back at Governor Ron DeSantis, who signed this law into effect before it was challenged in court. He ran for re-election after this, and won handedly because he knew how to talk about the issue. Where we have seen elected leaders that understand the issue of the sanctity of human life, they've successfully been able to communicate that to voters. So I see no reason why we won't see that happen in Florida. But we have to realize, Jenna, that the left will not take life as an answer. They will not stop. They will continue to push the abortion agenda. even after the Supreme Court in the Dobbs case. They want to continue to take this state by state. Obviously, they have the right to do that. But pro-life voters, voters that are concerned about the moral climate of America, have to realize this battle is not over. We have to continue to stand for life perpetually. And that means every time it's on the ballot, every candidate that runs for office. And we do need Republican elected officials and candidates like Governor DeSantis who understand this issue and are not afraid to embrace it and run on it.
And Tony, to your point, it really does animate both sides, Republicans and Democrats. Do you think for that reason we'll see Democrats put more abortion initiatives in other states on their ballots?
Yeah, Jenna, I think that's absolutely the case. And the more Republicans are silent or run from the issue, like we saw in the midterm elections, the Democrats will push this more, thinking they have a winning issue. But look, all we have to do is point to who's extreme here. We're talking about abortion until the moment of birth, funded by taxpayers. That's actually in the Democratic Party platform. So I just think that Republicans need to regain their footing on this issue that they've had for over 4 decades and stand for the sanctity of human life. I mean, this is a fundamental issue. It has not gone away. What we have seen, though, is that if we are persistent and we continue with our passion of being on what we know to be morally right, we ultimately prevail. And that's what we saw in the Dobbs case. So we have to continue.
Tony, let's talk about immigration. Former President Trump was on the campaign trail today in Michigan and called it Biden's border bloodbath. And, you know, the numbers really are not good for the White House. Under the Trump administration, there were upwards of 2 million southern border encounters. In Biden's 3 years, that number is upwards of 7 million. Tony, what did you make of the former president's comments today and his overall message, Republicans' message, on this issue?
Jenna, I think this is going to be the #1 issue in the election. I think there's going to be 4 major issues. I think this is one of them, crime, which is closely related to the border. I think the issue of life is going to be an issue for evangelical, Bible-believing Christian voters. And then I actually think Israel is going to be another issue in this fall that animates voters, because there's such a clear contrast between not just the 2 candidates, but also between the 2 parties. And I think Donald Trump is absolutely right. I was at the border in the last year of his presidency, and it was like a ghost town. Now it is totally chaotic, and it is, again, Jenna, this speaks to the consequences from elections. You elect lawless candidates to become the leaders, and you get lawlessness. And that's what we have on our border.
All right, Tony Perkins with the Family Research Council. We'll leave it there, Tony. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thanks, Jenna. You too.
Well, a deadly strike stops ships carrying aid to Gaza. Coming up, the latest on the humanitarian crisis unfolding at Israel as Israel's war against Hamas rages on. Welcome back. Global leaders are demanding answers after an IDF strike killed several workers from the U.S.-based aid group World Central Kitchen. A team had just finished unloading more than 100 tons of food in northern Gaza when an Israeli airstrike targeted their vehicle. The attack killed 7, including American, Polish, British, Australian, and Palestinian civilians. World Central Kitchen says it was coordinating with the IDF before the strike, and their vehicle was clearly marked as a humanitarian truck. The group now says it is pausing operations in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calling the incident tragic.
Unfortunately, in the last day, there was a tragic incident of an unintended strike of our forces on innocent people in the Gaza Strip. This happens in war. We are checking this thoroughly. We're in touch with the governments, and we will do everything for this not to happen again.
Meanwhile, Iran is vowing revenge after an airstrike in Damascus killed 2 of its top commanders Monday. Syria and Iran blame Israel, but Israel has yet to comment. The attack comes as Jerusalem has escalated strikes on Iranian military targets since the start of Israel's war with Hamas. North Korea launched a ballistic missile into the sea today, a sign of growing threats to the U.S. and her Pacific allies. Analysts believe the test involved a new intermediate-range hypersonic missile. It's designed to go farther, faster, and be harder to intercept. A missile with this power could theoretically reach all of Japan and American military bases on the island of Guam. And for the first time since November, today President Biden spoke with his Chinese counterpart. It's the latest push by the White House to stabilize relations and avoid a direct conflict with Beijing.
The two leaders held a candid and constructive discussion on a range of bilateral, regional, and global issues, including areas of cooperation and areas of differences. They encouraged continued progress on issues discussed at the Woodside Summit, including counter-narcotics, cooperation, ongoing military-to-military communications, talks to address artificial intelligence-related risks, and continuing efforts on climate change and people-to-people exchanges.
The call comes days ahead of a visit to China by Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The health effects of a hot trend among tween girls. Why a Sephora shopping trip could cause more harm than good. Next. Welcome back. Researchers say mental illness is skyrocketing among teens, and smartphones are to blame. Now, many are turning to their favorite social media apps to get mental health advice. A new study from EdWeek Research Center found more than half of students use apps like TikTok to self-diagnose mental illness. And 65% of teachers say they've seen the phenomenon in their classrooms. Experts warn that is a big problem because teens can easily misdiagnose themselves or pursue medications that aren't right for them. But some note the solution isn't necessarily to take phones away, but to make professional help more accessible. Well, to a craze sweeping social media, young girls are rushing to Sephora to buy the latest beauty products advertised by their favorite influencers. It might sound harmless, but as CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson explains, doctors and parenting experts are sounding the alarm.
Nationwide, swarms of preteens flood into high-end beauty stores, namely Sephora, spending hundreds on sophisticated makeup and skincare products.
Of course, we had to get the concealer. And then I got this Drunk Elephant Behydra Serum.
Tween social media influencers lead the way. Hashtag Tween Skincare grabbing more than 49 million views on TikTok.
These are my day and these are my night.
Often demonstrating their complex regimes using pricey clay masks, eyebrow shapers, and more that appear to be made for grown-ups.
We all should go buy this.
Last year, teens' cosmetic purchases rose by a third, and they bought almost 20% more skincare items. Adult women are taking note.
We all know about the epidemic of young preteen girls that are absolutely going buck wild raiding Sephora.
Every time you go into Sephora now, it's just all little girls.
And in some cases, pushing back.
I just died a little. Why does this adorable 11-year-old need makeup and the skincare routine, which is more complicated than mine?
Dermatologist Brooke Jeffy says some skincare products in particular are not suited for tweens and warns they should avoid products containing harsh exfoliants and anti-aging ingredients.
Many of these skincare products deal with adult skin issues. So age-related changes like wrinkles, hyperpigmentation, and dullness to the skin, which kids don't have.
Using the wrong products can potentially harm a child's skin barrier.
When that barrier is not working effectively, we get things like redness, we get rashes, we can get infections.
Dermatologists say preteens should wash their face with a gentle cleanser and use a sunscreen, possibly also a light moisturizer. But that's about it. And these items can be very affordable at a pharmacy or discount store.
Your children are going to be discipled either by someone or something.
Christian parenting expert Kelly Newcomb says even more concerning than the trend's physical impact is the spiritual one.
A lot of times, social media has taken on a role of almost an authority well, then the parent often loses a little bit of authority, and then God, of course, loses a big part of authority.
She advises parents to teach their children moderation.
Understanding that their worth is not found in these beauty treatments, and that their worth really is found in Jesus Christ, making sure that they are taking care of their physical bodies, which we know is temples of the Holy Spirit, and God does command us to take care of them.
She says the first step toward achieving that balance involves minimizing time spent on social media. 1 in 3 U.S. teens say they're on YouTube or TikTok several times a day, and close to 1 in 5 say they're on it constantly.
It's too critical of a time to just, kind of ignore it and say, we'll just let this pass. It's a trend. It will go away, because I think it means more.
Child psychologist Carolyn Rubenstein says the preteen years are pivotal because that's when kids are easily influenced to adopt values they can hold on to for the rest of their lives.
This tween period where they're developing who they are. And what we're seeing is that the influence is becoming much, much bigger from online social media and these parasocial relationships with influencers.
Of course, preteen girls have always dabbled with the concept of beauty. Still, as they think about what it means to be a woman, today's trend is more extreme and potentially harmful, largely because of the influence of social media. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Thank you, Lori. And still ahead, a sweet spring celebration. Finally tonight, a unique spring tradition that looks like a sweet scene out of a movie. Thousands of marshmallows rain down from the skies over Detroit. It is the annual Great Marshmallow Drop. On the ground, hundreds of children try to snatch up as many of the falling sweet treats as possible. While in the air, a helicopter dumps around 15,000 marshmallows. And the event is for everyone, including those with special needs, for whom there is a second drop.
Being a special needs mom, I love seeing events like these that are catered towards him so he doesn't feel excluded. And it was just a celebration. The weather is beautiful, so we were happy to get outdoors and interact and pick up some marshmallows.
It looks like a great day. Children collect the marshmallows in exchange for prizes that include candy, coloring books, and even water park passes. All right, that's going to do it for Faith Nation this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.